Hello, everybody. Happy Monday night. This is week 4 of our summer inventory challenge where we are figuring out exactly what we want to get for our food storage and what we have already and what we still need to buy. So that is the plan for the whole summer. We are halfway through, I guess, by the end of this week. So I just wanted to come on live tonight to talk about what we're going to be inventorying for week 4. I apologize if my house is noisy. You may hear teenagers yelling in the background off and on. We had vacation a couple of weeks ago all together, and then my kids and my husband's kids each went to their other parents for a week, and today was the first night they were all back together, and so they are super excited, and they couldn't go to bed because they just want to hang out with each other. It's super cute. So please forgive any noise, but I tried to get them to go to bed. They never go to bed. Anyways, so today we are kind of doing a cross. If you follow the Food Stores Made Easy baby steps, we have step 5 is grains and step 6 is legumes. So we're going to kind of cover both of those this week. And I added meats because a lot of people kind of count the legumes category as protein, and so meats fall into protein. So I sort of lump those together as baby step 6 is legumes and other proteins. So we're going to talk about all of that today. I'm going to give you guys kind of where I've been, where I am now, where I want to go with those items, and give you a bunch of resources to help you maybe know exactly what you want to do for these categories, and then how you want to inventory them. So last week you should have made a plan. So whether you're going to be doing your calculator like recipe based or just calculator based, you should have an idea by now of how much of everything you need. Now, if you didn't finish that, at least this week you can work on your grains and legumes. Now, I, in general, feel like it's good to follow the calculator and just say, have 300 pounds of wheat, grains per person, etc. Just as a starting point. And then as you get going, you can figure out more of what you would actually want to cook with those items. So let's start talking about grains first. When I first started food storage, I didn't even know what wheat looked like, and we were supposed to store hundreds of pounds of wheat, and I just thought that was ridiculous. And so I really started with just like 3 months of normal foods, and I didn't even want to touch long-term food. So in case that is you, this is what wheat looks like. It kind of just looks like rice, like little brown rice. It's a grain. And I went to a friend's house, and she had a Wonder Mill, and she showed me how to grind wheat. So I'm going to do a quick little demo for you in case you've never seen that. Let's do that first real quick. So it's kind of loud, so I guess it's good my kids aren't in bed, right? I'm just going to show you how we grind wheat. Since that is the staple, if you have wheat and you have a grinder, then you can make so many foods with your flour because white flour doesn't last very long and it's not as nutritious. So in an emergency, you would rather have whole grains. Now, you may not be able to use an electric grinder in an emergency. I also have a hand grinder. And so, but if I had to always hand grind wheat, I would never practice using my wheat. So that's why I recommend having both. So I'm going to show you. You turn it on first. Oh. It takes a while to get quiet after it's done. So I only did a little bit. And you're supposed to have a foam little filter on the top that keeps it cleaner, but I won't. One of my children ate mine, so it goes over top of here. So you might have seen some flour spewing out of there. But I'm going to show you. So when I went to my friend's house and she showed me this, and I was like, you can't really see it. It's flour. Like, I know how to cook with flour. So all of a sudden I was like, oh, I know how to cook with wheat. And it just was like a light bulb went off in my head that I didn't need to learn this whole new way of cooking. I just needed to practice cooking with wheat and see how things turned out. So the other comment, and we talked about this a little bit last week on the live with some good questions, from people is, what if you can't do wheat? So for me, I can't do wheat anymore because of my Hashimoto's disease, so I am gluten-free. So what can you do for that? So the awesome thing about having your own wheat grinder is you can grind any grains. So you can do rice and make a rice flour, millet, tons of other grains that you can do instead of wheat. And then you can replace them in recipes. So some recipes, and this is why you practice, you have to experiment. So some recipes you can just sub them out, like I did crepes, and it was rice flour instead of white flour, and they turned out great. Now if you were gonna do like breads, it's not gonna be equivalent. So you definitely need to practice, but it is a good alternative, and then you can start Googling recipes like rice flour recipes, oat flour recipes, and you'll find some online that'll be more specific for that. So I think that's a good option. Now, if you have a serious allergy, you're going not want to cross-contaminate your grinders with the other grains. But for me, I just clean it out, kind of blow through it, and then I can grind whatever I want. And it doesn't seem to affect me too badly to just have minimal amounts. Other grains, you can do quinoa, you can do rice, pastas. So if you can do any of the pastas that are gluten-free, you can store that. So loads of options to choose from in terms of grains. I do count like my more short-term pastas as part of my grain quantities. You can also make your own pastas. And so that's something I wanted to, I mean, we've shown a little bit on the blog, but it's something I definitely want to look more into. So that is grains. If you have questions, you can leave them in comments and I'll come back to them later. I know most people don't hop on live this late at night, but everyone can watch the replays. Okay, so let's talk legumes next. Legumes can be really intimidating. So when I first started this blog with Julie, my sister-in-law, who doesn't do it with me anymore, we kind of took turns in researching and posting about each step as we were developing the baby steps. And neither of us wanted to do step 6 because we didn't really like beans, we didn't know how to cook beans, and they were really intimidating to us. And then Julie one day got this book called Country Beans by Rita Bingham. I'll put a link to it in the comments after, but she came to me after and was like, Jody, I've been dreaming of beans, because it opened up a whole new world to her of how you can use beans. So if you, again, have a wheat grinder, you can grind beans and use the bean flour to make like a cream sauce. So you mix it with water and a little bouillon, and it can make like cream of chicken soup, and it's way healthier, way less preservatives, way longer shelf life. And so all of a sudden you can have all these cream bases. You can make like potato soup. You can make mac and cheese using it. You can make so many different things, and then you get the fiber of the beans and the health of the beans without all the fat of a white sauce like white flour and butter and milk and all that. So, and then also the other thing that kind of changed our bean life was a pressure cooker. So everyone uses Instant Pot these days. They're awesome, and they teach you kind of the benefit of being able to cook beans quickly, because all of a sudden you can use dry beans and you can cook them fast instead of having to soak them. So I do a kind of a mix of beans. So this category is something interesting. You can do canned beans from the store, shorter shelf life, and then you usually have some additives in them. Excuse me, depending on the brand. You can do dried beans. So this is actually a 12-bean soup mix that I got and repackaged in like Costco containers, because these are awesome for everything. So dry beans are cheaper. A consideration with dry beans is using, in an emergency, if you were powerless cooking and you had to cook them long enough and soak them, like water is a consideration and fuel is a consideration. And so I like dried beans for a long-term emergency where, you know, maybe a job loss or something, where I can still access my regular stuff, because they're super cheap, they're easy to store forever. But in an emergency type situation where fuel is a concern, maybe shorter term, I love instant beans. So this is a fabulous product. These are great for meal in a jars. They cook up fast, so they've already been cooked and then dehydrated. And so they rehydrate. They're already cooked. They just have to soften up. So those are really great if fuel conservation is an issue. So I have some cases of This, I like to have a mix. So basically with all my food, I have a mix. So different ways of storing. You can also home can your own beans, which I have not done, but I would love to do that and do a tutorial because sometimes for recipes, I mean, if you have home canned beans, again, they're already cooked. So for fuel storage, for fuel conservation, they're going to be a good option for you. And plus, they're yummy and easy for regular everyday cooking, and you're rotating through and using your food. So I love that. So that's kind of the beans. So again, if you've done your assignment from last week and you sort of know your recipes, like if you're doing some meal in a jar, you're going to have some beans, probably instant beans, that you're going to be storing. If you're just doing the calculator, you'll calculate how many legumes, and legumes cover everything from the dried beans to also like split peas, lentils, a lot of really good healthy foods. If you're a vegan, those are some great options. And just if you're minimizing meat, just if you want to be healthy, beans are a really great health food. And there are some tricks to avoiding other issues that happen when you eat too many beans. But really what I found is it's important. They always say this, but it's really true, to store what you eat and eat what you store. And so I try to take everything that I'm storing and incorporate those into my regular cooking. And so we eat a lot more beans now than I ever used to, just because I want my family to be used to it, and I want to rotate them, and I want to practice cooking with them, and I want it to feel normal if we ever have to live solely on our food storage, that they're not like, what are all these weird foods that we're eating that we're not used to, instead of Little Caesar's pizza or something, you know. So that's legumes. But let's finish up with meats. So meats is one area of food storage that I think is super intimidating to people. They think it's going to be disgusting, like canned meat's going to be like dog food or something. And then freeze-dried meat, they just can't really grasp it. So I want to show you guys a couple options with meats. They're playing ping pong, sorry it's so loud. So you can do meats, just like tuna fish. They also have canned chicken. They have some really good ones at Costco that I've bought. That's like chunk chicken. They can have like beef chunks that you can buy as well. Those are good options. Shelf life is going to be a consideration, and you know, additives, preservatives, those kind of things. So if you're going to do the canned route, I would recommend home canning. Obviously, it's time consuming, but cost effectiveness is great, especially if there's a big sale. I mean, meat prices have skyrocketed lately, and so if you can get a really good deal on something and throw it in your freezer until you have time to can it, that can be a really great option. I don't have any home canned ones on hand right now since we moved, because I used up all my stuff. So I would show you, but I'll link to some tutorials on the blog where I did some ground beef and some chicken. It seems scary. You do have to have a pressure canner, which is different than a pressure cooker. So yeah, I think that home canned meats are a great option, and they're also great for convenience. Like when you have a busy night and you don't want to thaw and cook meat, you can just throw in your home canned stuff, and it actually is pretty good. I feel like they're a good substitution. Some people consider freezer foods as part of their food storage, and so meat is a great thing to put in the freezer. I would recommend having a food saver or something to vacuum seal your meats in, so they don't get freezer burn. Because I know whenever I just throw meats in that's just like in saran wrap, it doesn't last very long in my freezer. But when I've taken the time to food saver them, suck the oxygen out, that makes a big difference. So if freezer foods are part of your storage, then definitely you can count that. And then the canned goods you can count too. So now the final way you can do meats is freeze-dried. So freeze-dried meat, again, I was a little bit of a late adopter to being convinced that this was going to be good. And I felt like the cans were so expensive. They're like $60 for a can or $80 for a can. This is the chopped chicken. And I actually end up using this all the time. So you can store a ton of it in small spaces. It lasts forever. So you don't have to worry about rotating it. It's the 30-year shelf life. So you can just buy a case, throw it in your basement. It's there for emergencies. You're good to go. Or you can keep a little bit on hand for those everyday emergencies. So now it seems expensive for one big can, but this goes a long way. So like in a recipe that would normally call for a pound of hamburger, I might do like a cup of hamburger. And so we've got like 11 cups in a can. And so then, it doesn't end up as cost prohibitive as you might think. But what's really nice is if you just have a couple people at home, or you don't want to thaw a whole entire pound of hamburger for a little, half a batch of tacos or something, you can just scoop out a little bit out of the jar, out of the can. So I like it for that. My favorite use for meats is the meal in a jars. So I am a huge fan of meal in a jars. I do a meal in a jar email every month based off the monthly specials from Thrive, which I'm so late this month. I'm sorry, but it's coming out tonight, actually. I'm in the middle of working on it in between doing this. So we are going to have that. But I love the meats for meal in a jars because then everything's all contained in one jar, or at least you have all the ingredients to make a quick, easy meal. And again, for fuel conservation, this is fabulous because you don't have to worry about cooking meat from your freezer and wasting fuel to thaw it and cook it or whatever. You have everything all in one jar. And then you can just add water, cook it up, and you're good to go. So the meats are usually the foundation of most of my jar meals. I have had some requests for non-meat ones, which this month is actually a non-meat one, so there you go. But it's a good way to get protein. It's normal. The meats, I feel like they're a very good substitution for fresh. Sometimes some recipes you can tell that it's freeze-dried. Other times people have no idea. And so just test it out, experiment, use it with your family and see what they like, and then store it. And like I said, you don't have to worry about rotating if it's not something that's going to fit into your budget to use on a regular basis. But if you do want to have a little on hand, you can buy the little pantry can size and then just use that for emergencies and not worry about opening a whole can and losing the shelf life on the whole big can. Because once you open it, your shelf life goes down drastically. So I have two food storage calculators. The first one is a more traditional one based off of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints calculators from like the 70s. Which are based on some BYU studies of nutrients that people should eat in a day. So that's kind of the more traditional wheat and beans calculator. Then we updated one, took out a little of the grains and like powdered milk a little less, and added in fruits, vegetables, and some meats. And so if you're interested in storing meats, we did it based on freeze-dried, but you could substitute out for whatever meats you want. But really, the meats make sense if you're doing like a recipe-based system. So if you have meals that you're going to want to make for your family and you know that they call for meat, if you're going to have spaghetti then in your storage, then make sure that you have some ground beef, either canned or freeze-dried on hand. And so you can kind of figure out your amounts if you want to do home canned, or you can use our calculator and it gives the amount that you would want to store of the freeze-dried meats if you want to just go strictly off that calculator. But like I said, it's a good starting point to start with a calculator so you know you have this food. But really, like I'm to the point in my food storage life where I want to know kind of exactly what I'm going to cook with that food because I want to make sure I have all of the ingredients for the meals that I like making with my food. And if I'm missing some spices or missing, for my bread recipe, I need to have vital wheat gluten, and I've got to make sure I've got enough vital wheat gluten for my favorite bread recipe. So things like that. So definitely make sure that you've gone through and worked through your plan for inventorying for last week, which the giveaway is the Meals in Minutes book and the Food Storage Made Easy book. And I haven't seen a lot of people posting this week about what they're doing with their inventory plans. So definitely go in the group and make some posts. I haven't picked the winners yet. I'll pick them tomorrow, so it gives some more time for people to enter. So share what you're doing with your inventorying and with your recipe plan. And then use that as your foundation for figuring out exactly what you want to have for your grains, legumes, and meats this week. And then you can share. I know people don't really like to share specifics about what's all in their storage, but whatever you feel comfortable with sharing, I'll share mine. You know what I already have. I've shared a few pictures of my bucket storage in my basement, but then there's a lot. I've got cases of boxes of cans of all the different grains. I've got so much stuff in so many different places that I really do need to do a complete inventory now that we've moved and I got rid of some expired stuff and I've kind of reevaluated how to do my storage. So I'm excited for this week. I'm excited for my inventory. I'm still finishing off my recipe plan. If I ever get it finished, I'll share it. Like I said, whatever you're doing over this time period, the main thing is to figure out where your holes are. So figure out what you have and where your holes are. You don't have to have it all done. You just need to know where you need to go from here. So you got to figure out what you already have and figure out what you still need to get. So hopefully that helps. Make sure that you are signed up for the emails. You can do that at the link at the top of this live. And if you want the meal in a jar that I'm working on, there's a separate sign up for that. And I can post that in the comments. So hopefully you guys have a great night. And I will watch comments on this tomorrow because hopefully more people will see it when it's not midnight Eastern time. So happy Monday. We'll see you next week to end the video.